Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome senior student athlete Katelyn Ohashi and Pac-12 Coach of the Century who has earned 7 NCAA championships, Valorie Kondos Field.
It goes electric wavy when I turn it on. Off from my city, off from my home. We're flying up, no ceiling when we in our zone. I got that sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet. I feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. Ooh, I can't take my eyes off of it, moving so phenomenally. The way we rock it, so don't stop. It's under the lights when everything goes.
Keep it going.
Nowhere to hide when
Keep it
I'm getting
going.
too close.
Here we go, we're moving.
So just imagine.
Here we go, back.
Nothing I can see but you when you dance, dance, dance. Feel good creeping up on you. So just dance, dance, dance. Come on, all those things I shouldn't do, but you dance, dance, dance. And ain't nobody leaving soon, so keep dancing.
You want to sit there?
I don't care.
Okay. You guys are great. Julianne got you guys going, right? Is there an intro? Is there one? Am I just supposed to talk? Okay. First of all, before we get started, I'd like to give you my cell phone number, and I would like for all of you to text me the name and numbers of your stylists. Dang. Aren't they hot?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm stalling because I'm winded.
I know, me too.
Okay. I'm going to brag a little bit, so then I can tell you like the really fun stat. Yeah, you heard I'm the Pac-12 Coach of the Century. Makes me... Every time I say that, Katelyn goes, that's because you've been around so long. I've been at UCLA for 37 years. I've earned 7 national championships. And was beyond honored to be inducted into the UCLA Athletic Hall of Fame. And I'm... Yo, oh, raise the roof, spread it out. Oh, I love it. The most fun stat, though, the reason why I'm bragging about all that is because the most fun stat is I've never done gymnastics. True. I went upside down for the first time in my life last year on my 58th birthday. My friend made me do a cartwheel, and I didn't even get over. It was horrible. And I did post it on social media. So I came to UCLA I've never done gymnastics. I was a ballet dancer. I came to UCLA in 1982. I was 22 years old, not gone to school, and UCLA offered me a full scholarship to come to college here, which was just such a blessing and gift. And I came to be the dance coach and choreographer for the gymnastics team. Got my degree, I kept choreographing, and in 1990, the athletic directors called me in their office and said, we're going to be making a change in our head coaching position. We would like for you to be the new head coach. And she said that I was catatonic for about 30 seconds. And all I remember is laughing out loud and saying, you understand I don't know the first thing about gymnastics. And she said, I've observed how you work with the student athletes, and I really like how you're firm with them, but you're compassionate, and I trust you'll figure the rest out. And that's all I got. So I love speaking after lunch because you guys are revitalized now. And so I started on this path of being a head coach in athletics at the most prestigious university in the world, and come on, that deserves an applause. And in a world of athletics that not only did I not know what I was doing, but it wasn't in my DNA. I grew up on stage. I didn't grow up having to win. I didn't I didn't grow up where that was my barometer for success. And so if I was going to lead this program, I had to figure out my why. That buzzword, you know, our why. What's our why? And it could not be about winning, because I didn't feel that. I didn't grow up with that. I didn't grow up with things like go hard or go home. You know, winners make adjustments and losers make excuses. It's like, that's the world of athletics. I didn't grow up with that. So I had to figure out my why, and it was very, very clear to me that my why and why I was going to do this job and why I was so honored to have the job of coaching gymnasts was because I really do believe that sports is one of the greatest venues in life to learn really tough life lessons. And it teaches you, especially for young women, how to be tough and gritty and resilient and all these great things. And I got to do that. And so, quite honestly, when people ask me what I do for a living, the very short answer is I develop superheroes. Oh. And I do that. I basically develop champions in life through the sport of gymnastics. And when they take all of that championship and they take it to the competition floor, that translates to winning. So that is very clearly my why. I've been the head coach for 29 years. Next week will be my last day coaching. I am retiring after 37 years here, but that was my why. It's been very, very, very clear every day of my life the last 29 years. Unfortunately, that is not how a lot of our athletes grow up.
My why was winning. I was expected to compete the hardest skills in the world. I was expected to compete them perfectly, and I was expected to win, which I all accomplished at one of the most prestigious competitions in the world that year, American Cup in 2013, with a broken back and a labrum tear in both shoulders. And that still wasn't good enough for my coach. So shortly after, at the age of 16, I was told that I might not ever do gymnastics again. My back would never be the same, and they wanted me to get surgery. But gymnastics was all I knew. So after 6 months of being in a back brace and finally going to public school for the first time in 4 years, I decided that I kind of missed the sport. But when I was originally told that I might not ever do gymnastics again, I was relieved because I had been miserable for so long with what I was doing. And when I finally started missing it, I started getting multiple opinions to see whether my back was stable enough to go back to gymnastics. And that's when I made the conscious decision to call Miss Val and choose to come to UCLA.
Okay, so Katelyn at that time, she just won the American Cup, which was the biggest meet in the world. She just beat Simone Biles with a broken back and 2 torn shoulders. Everybody knew Katelyn was going to train for the Olympic Games. And so normally when you train for the Olympic Games as a gymnast, you go pro. So she wasn't going to go to college. So imagine me. I get a call. Hi, Miss Val, it's Katelyn Ohashi. She might as well have said it's Kobe Bryant or Serena Williams or even Jackie Robinson. It's like, I was like, oh, whoa. I've been fangirling over you ever since.
Me too.
So I get the call, and she just says to me, I don't want to do elite anymore. I'm not going to train for the Olympic Games. And I could not understand this because she just won the most prestigious competition in the world. And so I asked her, I said, she was 16, yeah? I said, Kate, when was the, I didn't say Kate. I didn't call you Kate till you came to college. Katelyn, I said, when was the last time you really loved gymnastics? And she was silent. And she said, when I was 11, before I started competing elite. And I thought, she spent a third of her life miserable to the point that she was ready to give it all up. So we obviously recruited her. She came to UCLA. And fast forward to her freshman year, this is when she's going to start rolling her eyes. It's okay. She had a less than stellar freshman year. Did you roll?
No, not yet.
She got out of shape. True. I'm just waiting for her to pipe up with something smart, Alecky. And really was bringing about 70% of her ability. And we were in a team meeting in the middle of our season, competition season, it was February. And our sports psychologist was there, and he was explaining to all of us, not just the student athletes, but the coaches as well, that we all have this anchor inside of us that holds us back from becoming the best that we are capable of becoming. And he went around one at a time to all of our student athletes and asked them what their anchor was. And a lot of them sadly said their anchor was trying to please their parents or trying to please their coach. And when he got to Katelyn and said, I'll be Dr. Parham right now, and he said, Katelyn, what is your anchor that's holding you back?
I just don't want to be great again.
Okay. And he said to me, Miss Val, how does it make you feel? Well, I'm not proud of this, but the first thought that went through my mind was an out-of-state scholarship, all-inclusive, is about $60,000, and I wanted to say, then what the heck am I paying you $60,000 for? But thankfully, I checked myself, and I didn't say that. That was good of me, though, right? Yeah. And then he asked her to explain why she didn't want to be great.
Everything I correlated with greatness also meant brokenness. So I was broken emotionally, mentally, and physically.
Once she said that, I got it. I understood. And I also understood that I couldn't dictate and force her to want to be great. And I do believe that my definition of being a coach is motivating change. Not dictating change in someone, but motivating it. In order to do that, I had to earn her trust. And as we all know in relationships, trust does not come overnight. So we started going out to lunch periodically, and I just made a point to never, ever talk about gymnastics with her outside of the gym. She had to have her safe space where she understood I cared more about her as a human being than as the athlete. And we started developing that relationship. Fast forward to her sophomore year, where you were better. We argued about this in my office just now. You were slightly better.
I was on the way there.
You're so cute. And I heard a stat, and this statistic just shocked me, and it's true. It said that young women are on their phones an average of 8 hours a day, and young men are on their phones an average of 6 hours a day. They're probably sleeping those other 2 hours. And so we were in the gym, we were on balance beam, and I went up to her and I said, I just heard this, and I'm shocked. This statistic. Do you agree that young women are on their phones an average of 8 hours a day? And she said, yes. And she thought about it. She's like, yeah. And I said, you know what, Kate? Why don't you take some of those hours, and instead of just scrolling through social media, why don't you use your phone for something good and look up TED Talks? She didn't know what a TED Talk was. A lot of them don't at that age. So I said to her, you can look up anything you want by the most professional people in their fields. And TED Talks are brilliant because they're only about 18 minutes long. So she went home, comes in the next day, comes to balance beam, goes, come here, Miss B, and starts sharing with me all of the TED Talks that she had listened to the night before. And I literally saw a transformation in her from the previous day to that day. Her mind was open with curiosity and wonder.
Yeah, I would say discovering TED Talks allowed me to realize what my heart gravitates towards. And I found that most of the stuff that I was interested in was why women stay in abusive relationships, the effects of bullying, homelessness, and how powerful a positive mind is. And my sophomore year is actually the year I decided to start writing my blog, which is called Behind the Madness.
It's fabulous. It's called Behind the Madness. I had to give it a little bit more emphasis.
Okay. And this panel talks about whole health as mental health. And it's funny because I started tabs of like health and relating to all types of health. And that all transpired into poetry, which I've been writing a lot of. And this whole conference has inspired me to write a poem that I wrote 6 days ago that I would love to share with you guys.
She wrote... I have to tell you, we've been so honored and excited to be here, and we were really, really bummed that we actually had to train this morning because we are vying for the championship next week. We missed all the other presenters, but we've been talking about this a lot, and she just said, she came up to me 5 days ago and said, Miss Val, I want to read a poem to you that I was inspired by this conference to write.
Held captive to my own mind, mind, body, soul, mind feeding the soul, powering the body, trying to embody the lives of everybody around. Quiet to the eyes, but fighting to make a sound, internalizing in silence, hating and blaming myself. The thought that my mind was killing itself. Negative thoughts, hungry for more. My stomach took the pain that was hard to ignore. Diagnosed with ulcerative colitis a couple years ago. Started with what I thought were insignificant signs at 13 though. Ignoring and never guessing that stress could be the cause. Only when it was too late did I finally take a pause. Self-care overlooked led to physical destruction, leaving me with a late introduction to what I like to call well-being. About time I finally started seeing that time for mental health and physical health could be so freeing. So I was diagnosed 2 years ago with ulcerative colitis, and the first thing I did when I was told was I blamed myself. I don't think I'm that stressful of a person, but the childhood that I endured was very stressful, and so I thought somehow that if I could have changed my mindset earlier back on, that this would have never occurred. But coming to UCLA and finding Miss Val, she's really emphasized the quote, life is a series of choices, and the choices we make dictate the life we live. And coming here when Miss Val was going through her chemo was a great proof, living proof of that.
I'm so proud of you. Okay, that was beautiful. The relationships we have with people really, really do make our lives. And the fact that Katelyn came here when she needed to find a reason for choosing to live life differently coincided with me going through breast cancer. And when I got the diagnosis, when I got the call that a lot of us dread, whether about us or a family member, I remember being told, you have a very aggressive form of breast cancer, and I need you to get in immediately. And I hung up the phone, and at that moment, my life just stopped, because the only time I dealt with cancer was 25 years prior. My mother had died a very horrific, painful death with colon cancer. And I was ready for that battle. I just immediately went into battle mode. And at that moment, I heard very, very clearly, be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. And I don't know whether you translate that as to being cosmic energy or the universal energy or God, but I translated it as to being God telling me. And I heard it a second time, be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. I went home, told my husband the not so great news about the breast cancer, And then I told him about hearing this, and he said, it's from the Bible. I had never read the Bible. So I went over the Bible, and I looked it up, and sure enough, in Philippians 4, it says, be anxious for nothing, and then paraphrased, and grateful for all things. I heard this before I ever read it. This was a commandment. And just as Katelyn said, I actually do live by what I preach. It was a choice. I could choose to obey or not. And in the moment, I chose to obey. But I didn't know how I was not going to be anxious. I had just been diagnosed with a potentially fatal disease. So I went to my doctor the next day, and she said, you've gone from having the worst type of breast cancer to the best type of breast cancer. Because if you choose to get chemotherapy for a year, there's that word choice again, and if you choose to get surgery, I know it's going to work. And in that second, I understood the commandment. How I was not going to be anxious was through gratitude. I didn't have to get chemotherapy. I got to get chemotherapy because I lived at a time that has the chemo. And I live in a country that has the chemo. And I have a job that's going to help me pay for chemotherapy. I didn't have to. I got to. Changing that one word in my mind has changed my entire life for the better since that day. And I apply it to everything. I don't have to come to work. I get to come to work because I have a job, and I have a job that I actually really like. I don't have to do the laundry, which I hate to do. I get to do the laundry. Because I can afford clothes, and I can afford a washer and dryer. How cool is that? And I started living life is about choice. I started calling it my chemo spa, because a spa is someplace you go to feel better. And I'll never forget one of my athletes saying, it was on a Wednesday, and she said, Miss Val, can we have lunch tomorrow? And I said, I can't. I got to go to my chemo spa. And I said, my chemo spa is really getting in the way of my days. And she said, Miss Val, but it's going to give you a lot more days.
Meeting Miss Val through this transformative time in my life, or her life, also happened to be one for me too. And meeting her helped me realize how important it is, the relationships we keep in our lives. And she would say, the quality of relationships we have dictates the quality of life we have. So now, my 4th year, I have finally found that I have the strongest group of women and people in my corner supporting me through life and everything.
And I have to say one thing that's great. I mean, Katelyn's going to be 22 tomorrow. But it's interesting, this age group, because she had, as we know now, her story, she had very abusive coaches. From that, she went to a very physically abusive boyfriend. It's not that you have attracted people that have been mentally and verbally and physically abusive because you have such a caring heart, but there are times when you don't know the real person when you engage in a relationship with them. And the one thing that I'm just so proud of you is that you've been able to maintain these relationships with like your ex-boyfriends. And even though she hasn't cut them out, when they are being abusive, she will find help for them without letting them in her inner circle. And I think that's a really important trait for all of us to have. It's okay to be compassionate and help people without letting them affect you. So, in conclusion, we would just like to say that we're thrilled to be here, and that, as I tell the team all the time, it's really important for all of us to understand we have a very unique light inside of us. We need to, every day, fuel that light, own our light,
And share our light.
and she's so cute. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Happy birthday to you.